With risk management on a vessel, I have to inspect everything. It's all about planning and preparation and then execution. So I've just gone down to check what's the condition of my engine, the oil levels, the water fluid levels, how much fuel, my fuel filters. So these are really incredible, important pieces as I think about when I'm going to sail, when I'm going to race across an ocean, what are the things that I have to be fully ready for? And so this planning and preparation of risk management is so critical. I have to understand the condition of my vessel. I have to understand my physical and mental capacities. And I also have to have a plan for when things do go wrong. Now, I spent a part of my life as a commercial diver, and working underwater, we took immense risks. If something went wrong on an oil rig or on a dive ship, people perished. In 2010, British Petroleum had a huge blowout on the Deepwater Horizon. That that accident was a result of poor risk management, poor governance, poor anticipation in the maintenance and preparation. As a result, many people lost their lives. But then that risk assessment got even worse because British Petroleum tried to blame a contractor for the problem. And then, as the environmental disaster got worse, the public perception also ended up taking a huge hit. And then came the aspect of how do they put out the fire? The challenges that went along because they did not have a plan for fighting a fire in the deep water. And then the environmental disaster was immense and resulted in huge fines, costing the company billions and billions of dollars. And so, as a sailor, as a diver, as someone who spent time at sea, I've had to draw upon the experiences, my own experiences, the experience of others. So, an example, in the 1994, my solo race around the world in my monohull, I was deep in the Southern Ocean when I capsized in bad weather. And when my boat popped back upright from the capsize, my mast was broken and I had to fit a jury rig so that I could pull myself out of the circumstance because I was so far away from land, I was so far away from help. A fellow competitor may have been the closest assistance, but I could not rely on a fellow competitor, so I had to rely upon my own skills, my own assessment of the situation on my boat. And then I had to think about what is my role? Do I continue on in the yacht race from where I was in the Southern Ocean to Australia? Or do I turn back and go to South Africa? And as I looked at all the elements of the condition of my boat, I realized I could not continue safely on to Australia. And so the most prudent thing was to turn around and sail back to South Africa. I could not further increase my risk because of storms, because of the fragility of my boat. And then in South Africa, I was successful in obtaining a new mast. And again, it came back down to do I continue in the race? So I looked at the information, the data, and I knew how far it was from South Africa to Australia, and then from Australia around Cape Horn into back into the Atlantic Ocean across the Pacific. And then knowing that geography, knowing the mileage, I was able to overlay what would be the weather conditions if I depart now. And when I laid that information, I realized I'd be sailing in near hurricane force conditions. My boat could not withstand consistent hurricane force conditions. And so the smart move was not to endanger my boat, was not to take additional financial risk and endanger my life, but to retire from the race, to live to fight another day, to protect my reputation, to protect my resource. And so we have to really understand the aspects of what is leadership. How do we make critical decisions to go forward in the face of when things go badly wrong? British Petroleum did not make the right decisions, and hence they paid a huge price for those mistakes, and people paid with their lives. When it comes down to governance, I had the opportunity to work with readiness of government, where I worked with multiple governors and their staff, their key people in preparing each state for whatever risk that that state may face in a time frame leading from into the future. What were the lessons I had learned from the past to create a playbook to how to mitigate future risk? So we have to learn from our history, we have to learn from each other. We have to take every example and experience to say, what is it going to be? Of what risk is possible, and then should that happen, how do we mitigate it? And so I saw the aspect of the pandemic. I saw countries who had a solid plan in place to deal with the pandemic. But I also saw countries that did not have a plan to deal with pandemics. They did not think about what its implications would be allowing people to come together and do nothing. What it would be in terms of economic implications. So, having been a part of readiness of government and seeing these things, I saw good plans versus bad plans. I have lived experiences where I had to make difficult, tough decisions. And always, leadership matters. Who in your team is present to help give you honest, concrete, solid advice is absolutely important because for the stakeholders, the consequences are dire. We cannot afford to be wrong in our assessment of risk management. We cannot afford the risk that British Petroleum took by not maintaining the oil rig and then compounding the public relations problem, resulting in a huge loss to the shareholders. We cannot risk what can happen to society if we don't anticipate the future pandemics, the future threats, the aspects of climate impact. So we have to plan and prepare for what will that tomorrow look like. It is about knowledge, it is about teamwork, it is about leadership, it is about communication. How do we solve these things? It's up to us. It starts as individuals and it grows into our organization. It grows into strong, solid governance. And when we get these things right, we get to enjoy the beauty of moving across an ocean. So today, when I see dark clouds building on the horizon, I do not fear those dark clouds. I take it as a warning mechanism. I look at where are those dark clouds in relationship to where am I with my vessel? Where do I have to go to avoid the storm? What rocks lay in my pathway that could be a risk? How do I navigate around those things so that I can turn the barriers into opportunities?